Good evening and welcome to Athens City Council. It's Monday evening, February 22nd, 2021. It is 7 o'clock at night and we have a series of 3 committee meetings, the first of which will be the Planning and Development Committee. The chair of that is Councilmember Fall, and she's joined by Council Members Reisner, Grace, and Smedley.
Great. Thank you. Tonight we have several agenda items. First is amending a ordinance that we passed last year about the affordable housing that's going on in the University Estates. And Sarah Grace is maybe bringing that on because it's coming under the affordability, the housing affordability. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Fall. And yeah, we discussed this at our last Affordable Housing Commission meeting. And what it comes down to that the city entered into with the developer for building some homes out at University Estates due to a few different things that we need to amend that agreement. And because City Council approved the initial agreement, then any changes to that should also come through council. So there are a few changes, and a couple of them are just including definitions of terms that were in the agreement. For example, we are asking that the developer incorporate concepts of cluster design, and cluster design was not defined in the agreement, so we have included a definition, and that states that for the purposes of this agreement, cluster design means a residential housing project where housing units are located relatively close together or share common walls in order to yield more dwelling units than a typical residential subdivision of the same acreage would. Additionally, we have asked that the buildings be solar ready, and solar ready also needed to be defined for the agreement. And so for the purposes of this agreement, solar ready means planning and design of housing units that includes, to the full extent possible, utilization of the housing construction guidelines of the National Renewable Energy Laboratory's Solar Ready Buildings Planning Guide, Technical Report, NREL. And there is a link included to that planning guide. So we're asking that, to the extent possible, they build to those definitions and to those guidelines. The additional change is something that was certainly unsettling for the Affordable Housing Commission, and we talked about it quite a bit. So I want to try my best to accurately represent the Affordable Housing Commission on this, as well as introducing the amendment to the ordinance. And so the change is that the developer came to the city and it said that because of dramatic increases in construction cost, they are no longer able to build and sell units at the price we had previously agreed on. And so I did just a little bit of research and looked into things. And in 2020, for example, the cost of lumber for construction increased about 130%. So if you're talking about building 50 2- and 3-bedroom townhomes, just the lumber, the cost in lumber is going to be a dramatic increase. And so our original agreement had said that we would be setting the initial sale price of each unit at an amount not to exceed $220,000. And they have asked that we increase that base sale price to $240,000. So I think that, as one member of the Affordable Housing Commission stated in our meeting discussing this, if we want this development to go forward, we need to give them the flexibility to do this, because if they are unable to build it and then sell the units at a price that keeps them in the black, as a business, then they simply won't be built. The project won't go forward. And while $240,000 as a base price for a townhome initially doesn't strike many in Athens as what we think of as affordable, it is still a housing. It fills a need in the housing market in Athens. And we discussed the fact that at the time that the Affordable Housing Commission was meeting, there were fewer than 15 homes available for sale in Athens City School District between $150,000 and $300,000. So there are very few homes on the market in that price range, and of course those that are in a very wide range of condition. And so to have new, universally designed, so they're really accessible to individuals that might have mobility issues, they're energy efficient, solar ready, quality construction units on the market for this price. Ultimately, when the Affordable Housing Commission voted, we voted to recommend to council this change, but there were some concerns just because of the price increase. So I wanted to sort of put that all out there. I know it's kind of a lot for an amendment to an agreement that's already gone through, but I just feel that I needed to sort of accurately represent that discussion. And our city planner, Paul Logue, is here at the meeting, and I appreciate that. And he's also on the Affordable Housing Commission and has been very involved in this. So I'm sure we would attempt to answer any questions people might have. Yes, I see Member Smedley, and then Member Reisner, and Member Fall.
Thank you, Member Grace. I appreciate that context. I think it was very appropriate and needed and helpful to understand the bigger picture of that conversation. I do have two questions. The first question is related to item B, just before the item you were just discussing, where you reference a specific document. Is it common to do that? And I only bring it up because I wonder, this document is dated 2009. If there would be a time when that would be updated, would we be able to then use the more updated version of that document? And then the other suggestion would be to be more generic about the document so that we can automatically use the more updated one once it's available. And then my other question is, I had concerns about item 4 as well, and I have a better understanding of that now. So again, I appreciate that context. And this might be a question for Mayor and Paul Logue as well. Do we have initiatives or plans in place that might address what you brought up in terms of dealing with housing costs and housing opportunities that might be under that $240,000 amount?
I can start, Arian Smedley, Member Smedley, thank you. Because we have had lots of conversations about that. There is still significant developable space, land here in Athens, and I'm speaking all of Athens, that there are areas where we have identified that there could be development. And this was our first start at doing a TIF like this to help offset the costs of the infrastructure that's needed, is in particular when you've got open land, when you have open space that has no infrastructure, although the ability to ultimately tie in and expand out. We will continue to look at that and continue to look at other ways of moving forward with more what we are all thinking of as truly affordable housing here in the city of Athens. This is a start. That's not an excuse. It's a reality. And unfortunately, what we're experiencing is, 90 to 100% cost increase in things such as lumber. The building materials due to the pandemic have really exposed the entire United States and around the globe as to what happens when you are really in a supply and demand issue, to where supply is low, demand is high. And due to that impact on supply, unfortunately, or however you want to think about it, prices tend to go up when that supply is down and demand is way up. And that's one of the things with this particular project. Now, and it's directly related to the pandemic. We will eventually come out of the pandemic. And once we do, again, we'll have taken this particular process, hopefully with council's approval, through its steps to see how it works, to where we can use this as a template moving forward. But Member Smedley, we're absolutely looking at other projects that could happen around the city that would be more within that 140, 150 on up price range, because we need that too. We need it all. And it's just unfortunate that this project, which has been underway for quite some time, at least conversations, and this TIF wouldn't even come to be had it not been this developer coming forward and saying, hey, we understand that you're aware of this type of a TIF within a neighborhood development TIF. And could we at least meet about this and move it forward? Hence it coming before council several times as a way to move forward. It is unfortunate, and I make no bones about that when it comes to the increase. The alternative would be there will be no development of new housing, within this particular program. That is, to me, equally disturbing. As we try to move forward to make sure that we've got more affordable housing for people who want to live, work, and play here in Athens and Athens County.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Paul, did you want to add to that answer for Member Smedley?
Yeah. Good evening, everybody. Just a minute or two, if I may, and just to thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. And of course, just to kind of reinforce what Member Grace was saying, and also Mayor Patterson, there's a couple things to look at with what we're learning really quick here. And we kind of went into this TIF. This is a first time endeavor for the city that we've gone down using a residential TIF model. It's a state tool that's given to us in order to try to encourage residential housing to be built in a city. You're talking new construction, of course, and that means on a undeveloped piece of real estate, that means that they've got to build roads and curb and gutter and sewer and sidewalk and do all of those things, put in light poles, et cetera. And so there's a lot of cost involved with that. And so what we've seen at University Estates and other places in the city or around the city where you have to build that type of infrastructure is that in order to get that infrastructure built, you have to build homes and sell them at $400,000 or $500,000. And that's what we've seen at University Estates. Or you need to add more homes and try to scale it. You scale, you can get more homes in, then you can bring the price down per square foot. We're seeing a perfect storm with the cost for materials right now. And I shouldn't, that's in some ways, I guess that's a pun. Interest rates are historically low by any margin, by any metric. I think most of us are probably well aware of that. You're seeing 30-year fixed rates below 2%, or excuse me, below 3%. 15-year fixed rates around 2.25% right now. So those are like, I did mortgages 20 years ago, and I can tell you those rates are, ridiculous. We're also seeing that because of the pandemic, a lot of people are home a lot more often, And so they're doing home improvement projects because they're looking at their homes, they're looking at their walls, and they're saying, where can we build space? Where do we create our home office? All of those things. So there's that part of it going on. There's also just in general, especially in bigger cities, there's a lot of new construction going on. And then lastly, right now, there's a lot of concern. Typically in the building community, there's concerns about they know that prices will go up when a hurricane hits. That happens every time there's a major hurricane that hits the U.S. Prices for construction materials increases. We just saw one of the worst winter storms in the history, in our lifetimes, run through the entire country, and there's an expectation that storm is going to increase building materials again, especially with what's happened in Texas. And so all of those things are kind of coming to a head. The developer, and I know somebody in the chat asked who the developer was. It's Cornerstone Builders, are based out of Albany. They've done housing in our community in Athens for decades. They came to the city and they said, we have a real problem here. We do want to get this project built. We can't do it based on that 220. They thought they could when we signed the agreement. The draft of this was written in 2019. Took a long time, of course. We had a pandemic we were all going through, and there wasn't a lot of city council or city meetings going on for a while. And then we started ramping back up. And so now we're in this situation where we're trying to work through this. The developers wanting to build, and they're telling us that they simply cannot do it based on that 220. Whether this is the new norm for building materials, I don't know. I do think this is a good learning experience for everybody, but it's also important to note that if this is what we need to do to get new housing built of good quality at a price point lower than $350,000, we've got to Member Smedley's question there, comment. We do have this isn't going to solve our problem. It is going to get housing built at a price point that's not being sold in this community. But we still have a lot to learn and a long ways to go before we can really say, well, how can we get $125,000 homes built or $125,000 apartments? There's a lot that we need to talk about there. We've been working on that for years. We're not alone in this problem. Of course, we know that there's a housing crisis all over our country, but we have put in a lot of time. There's many members of this city council that have been investing in that. Michelle Pappy was the one who created the Affordable Housing Commission, and Michelle and I sat on a task force with the city and the university trying to work through that very issue. The big challenge I think we have, especially when it comes to working within our neighborhoods and working within the city, is, at some point you need to have resources to kind of interject yourself into the market in order to really make that happen. And that means you have to somehow acquire real estate or have land available. That's generally something that we don't have. But also then as soon as you start looking for homes in a neighborhood in Athens, and, sellers know that you're looking to buy. And so that raises prices as well. Anyway, I'm done. That was all.
Thank you.
Sorry about that.
No, go ahead. Member Reisner.
Thank you. I don't know if I really have a question or if I just have a lot of concerns. I'm still trying to get over the shock because it seems like we went through an awful lot of hoops, bent over backwards, or any other little analogy or metaphor to do our due diligence and make this project go forward. And now we're getting hit with this. My biggest fear is that the people that we had in mind to buy the homes will not be able to buy them. People who could afford a home like this, good salary, or with other resources behind them, can buy them up. And we're sort of back where we were with the problem unsolved. Yeah, there's more houses there and someone bought them, but it wasn't the target audience that we had in mind. So I'm very apprehensive about this. I know the pandemic and COVID is I don't want to say excuse. I mean, it's there. And I watch this old house and I find out, poor old Norm had to pay double for his construction materials in order to get the house built and so on and so forth. Of course, but on the other hand is prices after this is over will go down. Things go up, they go down. we could just as easily have a reverse housing crisis where suddenly there's homes on the market and they don't sell. What do you do then? What are they going to do, the people that own them? So I don't know. I'm confused. I just don't know what to say about this. I think at the moment, if there was a vote, I'd vote against it. That's how I feel about it. And that's it. That's all I got to say.
Well, the one thing that I'll say, as far as in terms of does this address the need that we were tasked with addressing? And the Affordable Housing Commission is tasked with looking at a lot of housing needs, and not specifically low income housing, which is a different category. But we're really we have someone on the Affordable Housing Task Force or Commission from Economic Development, because they work to bring business development, economic development to Athens County, and the businesses say there's not enough housing. And we have a representative for seniors who's looking to be sure there are homes available to allow people to safely age in place. And I think that's one really ideal target market for these townhomes, because they're built to universal design. So they've got first floor master bedrooms. They're fully accessible units. They're townhomes, so there's going to be lower maintenance, responsibility, things like that. So
I can understand what you're getting at, but
yeah. So it's if we can provide homes to meet those needs and needs for people with disabilities too.
Right.
We are meeting needs of citizens or potential citizens of the city, and hopefully just by having 50 additional high quality units on the market, that may cause the cost of lower quality product to go down. So, because I know that's been a complaint, that sort of the quality of what you get for your dollar in Athens can be really poor sometimes.
Right, but see, last year I was going to buy a house for $220, and the house that was built is a house that has everything that would make a house worth $220,000. Now it's $240. $20,000 difference is a big difference. That makes or breaks a deal. I don't know.
I guess I don't know what the alternative is at this point, as far as if we want this type of housing to be built. I know Member Clodfelter and Member Fall, you raised your hand earlier.
I think we are actually living through the tension that was when we developed the Affordable Housing Commission, that it was specifically for this type of market, not low and moderate income, because they had people at the table already who advocated for them, and there were other programs. And then there was seniors also have similar things. So this is an underrepresented market. So that was one of the assumptions going into creation of the housing. And so there's always been this tension with what's affordable and those issues. We can talk about those, in a philosophical way. I think that for the city, this is a relatively low risk, because there's not going to be any increases in taxes unless there is, this development. So it's not like we put in the infrastructure and they may or may not come, which is something that some cities have been doing, trying to get different development going. I think one of the issues that we've been grappling with also is affordability within the city. There's a lot of issues in those, and that's something that we're taking from the comprehensive plan and from the housing plan to be able to better make a better priority and make some goals and objectives through the comprehensive plan process. So there has been a lot of work, and I would like, like right across the road is the WODA development, which is something that we've been working on and getting through, and working with WODA, which is a well-known company that does low to moderate income and senior housing. They did the Nelsonville High School, awesome project, so I think that this is the tension. I understand what Jeff is saying. For us, it's not really a huge output of capital sort of thing when you look at the first 10 years and such. And there are other sort of tools and techniques that are going into this to make sure that they don't get turned over too quickly and those sort of things. Does the pandemic suck big time? Sure. I guess you can't do certain lumbering sort of things without doing the pandemic thing. That's unfortunate. At the same time, this is right in line with a lot of what the comprehensive plan has been saying and stuff. And right now, this is a perfect opportunity to be able to work on that. So, thank you.
Thank you, Member Claude Felter.
Well, thank you for all your work on this, Member Grace and City Planner Paul Logue and everybody else who has helped, the mayor, and I'm not even sure who all has helped. Because of the tension that Member Fall referred to, which I think is real, and I think there's a lot of confusion and some tension in the community about this, I would respectfully suggest that we not ever call this an affordable housing development. $240 would be laughable to people in town who actually need affordable housing. And I'm afraid it would hurt the credibility of the Affordable Housing Commission. So maybe there's another term that would convey exactly what it is, but really, I will never call it that. I would respectfully suggest that nobody else does either, because we're going to get laughed out of the room at $240,000. Also, I think that Member Reisner made a good point in his several, but one thing in particular, I, of course, do not have a crystal ball, nor am I an expert on the housing market, but I think with the decline in enrollment at Ohio University and the fact that last year's startlingly smaller freshman class, they're going to be juniors next year, right? This fall, they'll be sophomores, then they're going to be juniors, and that's when they'd be hitting the apartments. And so there'll be far fewer students, unless we get a huge surge of transfers or something, there'll be far fewer students seeking rentals. And I think it's at least a possibility worth considering that some of the people who've been long-term landlords in Athens may decide to sell their buildings rather than have them sit vacant. Quite a few were vacant this year, right? I saw more vacancy signs than I've ever seen during the whole year. And that's not necessarily going to get better for several years, according to the predictions from Ohio University. So it might be that all of a sudden there are a glut of houses on the market. Granted, some of the houses that have been rentals are not necessarily the same kind of houses you're talking about, but I just think that having a glut of houses, period, might affect the market. Or the perception of the market. I don't know. Feel free to tell me that I'm off base, but I just think that we should be really careful not to overinvest in housing that people can't afford.
Well, I want to just sort of reiterate Member Fall's statement that this is very low risk. The city we're not investing city dollars in this project. The risk is on the developer, it's their finances for that. And so that, but I think it's, to your point, I think that there could certainly be more houses on the market. Right now, the market is very tight. We have a realtor on the Affordable Housing Commission, and she said the real estate market for residential housing in Athens has stayed very competitive, with houses, selling quickly and average price continuing to increase throughout the pandemic, generally speaking. So but also I think it's important that we recognize that all cities have a need for different types of housing. And I think that townhomes with universal design is something that there are not very many of in the city at all. And so I think that fills a need. Mayor Patterson.
While I 100% agree with you, Councilmember Clodfelder, because I've been meeting with the landlords here in the city of Athens, and that, yes, that time may come, whether it's this year or next year or who knows when, that there could be a period of time where there is a number of former homes converted into rental units being back on the market for anyone. But bear in mind that those typically are not universally designed homes. And therein lies the rub, in my mind, is that part of the agreement under this TIF is that they need to be universally designed homes. And the developer has done that to where these are going to be age in place types of units, or they're going to be for those who have all needs to be able to purchase a home and live in a home to where they know that they can either be ready to move in because they are universally designed, or that they can be easily modified in the future to accommodate someone who wants to age in place. So keep that in mind. While I don't disagree with you at all, I think that likely will be happening, but I think it's a much more expensive maneuver to try to retrofit a home that was formerly a rental unit carved up into a house that could accommodate 3 unrelated individuals, and having to flip that back into a home that someone could live in, and for it to be an age-friendly home. That would be extremely expensive and difficult to do. So this is a way around that, quite honestly.
Member Crowell.
Thank you, Member Grace. I want to echo some of the comments across the board here. I share Member Reisner's concerns about this development. However, this conversation keeps taking me to larger issues. And the larger issues, obviously the word affordable is a relative term, right? Something affordable to a CEO in New York City is a different affordability than for me. So I look into what the Affordable Housing Commission is actually tasked with, and their powers and duties do not focus on affordable housing, even though the commission is named the Affordable Housing Commission. It focuses on housing in general. So in that respect, this development is fitting a need, as you said, that is relevant, that is needed in Athens, but is not necessarily that low-income housing, which might be another sort of focus. So my larger question on this specific development is that the ordinance in question, and I think Member Grace knows I'm going to bring up the zero energy edits, that it lays out that the basically, my questions are, I'm assuming that the Affordable Housing Commission is still interested in kind of signing off on this development, that the letters that they will have to be provided from the commission. The commission still plans on providing those. The developer must gain letters of support from the Athens Affordable Housing Commission prior to construction. So I'm assuming the Affordable Housing Commission is still going to do that. My question is that the ordinance says that the sort of under A in the ordinance, all 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 and 6 are all laid out as Affordable Housing Commission goals, which include but are not limited to. And then it lists the 5 or 6 items, which used to have zero energy, and now that has been removed. And I'm curious if that's been removed in this ordinance or that is no longer a goal of the Affordable Housing Commission. I'm interested in that. I'm interested in if that is also connected to COVID and price increases and the amount that it takes. We know that it can be a little costlier to do certain things, or it's again a definition issue. I mean, what is zero energy? How do we? It just says concepts of zero energy. I wish I had read it with a closer eye the first time it came around, because what does that really mean? So, are we trying to delve into that? Is it just solar ready now that we're interested in? Can we get energy efficiencies in there? But really, my question is on the larger scheme, what is the Affordable Housing Commission? If it's called the Affordable Housing Commission, what does that really mean? And what have its goals changed, or is it just this project? Member Grace, thank you.
So speaking to the goals of the Affordable Housing Commission, no, our goals and priorities have not changed. But I would say that in contrast to what frequently comes to mind for people when they think affordable housing, providing accessible housing for seniors that wish to age in place, even in the 225 to 240 price range, aligns with the goals of the Affordable Housing Commission, because that is a housing need in the city of Athens. It is a need that has been identified even in that price range. As to the zero energy, I emailed Planner Paul today to ask about that, and so I will let him address that portion of your question.
Thank you, Member Grace. Member Crowley, your question. The developers, Cornerstone, when they reached out to the city and said that they had issue, or they were asking for some definitions. One of the things, the reason why they were asking for that is they were talking with a local bank to get financing to begin the project. It was a big financing deal, of course, for the bank, and so the bank's attorney was looking over the TIF agreement, the signed development agreement, and said, "Well, what does this stuff mean? We need some definitions here. What are we funding here? So they approached us and said we need some definitions. So I drafted the definitions for the base sale price, as well as the cluster design and the solar readiness. As I was looking through definitions and saying to myself, what does zero energy mean? What I was finding was that zero energy is defined even by the U.S. Department of Energy as a building that is generating enough energy on site so that it is not pulling from the grid. It's neutral or zero. And so knowing that this project is not going to achieve that, I recommended that we strike that line out. I don't have any problem with us keeping it in there. Your point about it being a goal, it is a worthy goal for us to have as a city, both from housing construction, sustainability, et cetera. So I don't have any issue with us keeping it in there. There might, I don't know if their finance will have a problem with that or not. I'm certainly happy to ask if that's an issue. But to your question, it is still a goal. The reason I removed that, it actually seemed to me that solar readiness is moving towards zero energy, zero energy, but also the developers, the cluster design brings you better towards zero energy and sustainability, because you're using less space, you're having shared walls and things like that. So in general, they're more energy efficiency, and you can, Does that make sense?
It does. I mean, I think the net zero energy is a term that needs defined, that a developer can say. I'm concerned with a couple of things here. We could just say energy efficiency, just as this is something that is a foundation of the city of Athens, and say we want developers to be thinking about energy efficiency concepts.
Yeah. And I don't think there'd be any issue with us putting that in. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Well, I was going to say quickly too that kind of maybe this is to Member Reisner's points, although he didn't say this exactly. We're getting a little bit into the tail wagging the dog here, right? We have this sort of set of, this is what we want to do. And now we've got the developer saying, well, or their lawyers saying, well, if you change X, Y, and Z and raise the price, yeah, we'll do that. So it's a little bit sort of, well, how did we get here? But I understand how we got here for this development. And I do think it's probably needed. I'm just wondering about the future, both of the Housing Commission and how else we go forward because we all know we do need what I would really call affordable housing, right? For low income folks. And that's another problem we have to solve. Maybe not with this development, but I appreciate your work. And I just wanted to shout out to former member, my predecessor, the work that she and all of the members of the Affordable Housing Committee and Noah Tremblay and all of the universal design pieces, really, really important. And I appreciate the work. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we leave the topic of the zero energy, I did a little research on it today, and the U.S. Department of Energy has guidelines for zero energy ready. And so I thought energy efficiency or zero energy ready, because, again, we're saying this is a goal. We want to incorporate as much of these standards as we can. But energy efficiency could just be, well, we've got energy efficient appliances, which that's great, but I want more. I want our standard to be higher than that. And so this is, of course, the committee discussion of this topic. So I think perhaps Paul and I can do some more work and research on the energy efficiency, zero energy guidelines, and hopefully Planner Paul could have some conversations then with the developer as far as where we could land on that before it's introduced as a first reading. Member Claude Felter. Oh, sorry.
Excuse me. Another standard that is out there, though, it also has some issues with people not quite understanding the definitions, is the passive house standard. And maybe you're aware that the new county EMS building has been built to the passive house standard, which means, to your point, Member Grace, it has very good insulation in the walls, in the ceiling, under the slab, as well as the energy efficient appliances and other things. But the insulation is the real key. And I think it has very highly efficient HVAC systems as well. And so the utility costs in that building for the county are going to be really low. And I don't know how a developer would react to mention of that. That means you have to have large south-facing windows, and it might mean some design changes that they hadn't been considering. But to my knowledge, the passive house standard is one of the best when it comes to ensuring that there would be really good insulation, which that in and of itself would go a long way toward making it energy efficient.
Member Crowell, did you want to say something else before?
Thank you. Just quickly is that, yeah, I would definitely include that energy efficiency in the design and construction and not in the appliances or not in other things. As Member Claude Felter just pointed out, there's so much in the design and just simply the orientation of a building, as we all know. And if you are already doing the solar ready, then that should be part of the design as well. And the R value of the insulation and the windows, all of that can do a tremendous amount. Just if they start from the script from the beginning with incorporating these into their design and construction. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, Member Reisner and Member Fall.
Well, what's going to happen is that the developers and the contractors will say, well, we wanted $240,000 based upon the design of 2019. Now you want to add an R value, you want to kick it up from R19 to R36. That means the walls are going to have to be thicker. That means more insulation. And you know what the cost of that is right now with a pandemic? It's just going to bankrupt us. We can't do it for $240,000. We'll have to have $280,000 to make it your way. And if I was the lawyer there, that's what I would be arguing.
Well,
and then
I think because, I haven't been the one dealing with the developer, but we are here because they came to us, I believe, correct, Mayor and Planner. They came to us looking to do something. And if you look at all recent development, and they are actively building homes out at University Estates, they're not building any that sell for, I don't think, even under 400 right now. So I don't like I said, I can't speak for the developers or what they're going to say. And remember, they did agree to cluster design, solar readiness, and zero energy initially. That was in the agreement. And so I think if we just work on defining them, I don't get the sense that they're out to just keep pushing the limits with us.
Why not?
Yeah, well, because they could sell the lots and build homes, $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 homes.
And then we were on the TIF.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
But we don't get any universal design solar ready homes.
Well,
Member Fall had her hand up, and then Mayor Patterson.
I guess that's what you can. Oh, never mind.
I think that idea, they're not going to be able, before, if council signed off on anything, that will be the price, so that we can have that discussion as we are. I think we also need to look at the ability of us using a TIF, a residential TIF, to help encourage higher standard housing with universal design, because those houses or even those apartments are not going to be built. Even any of the apartments that were built in the last 10 years, they may have one or two units that they were made to do universal design because the state made them do it. None of the houses that they build at University Estates has any sort of really radical building code that's imposed by Athens, because we don't have that sort of thing. This is the only way to get this many units of universal design, which is super important, especially for senior markets, and cluster design it. And I think that seems like a good trade-off. We're using a new model. It could be a model that works really well. And then it will be able to be looked at citywide as a tool, just like our downtown development zones have been a tool to try to get more development and such. So this is a new way of looking at having homes that are higher quality and affordable in the context that we don't have that market, and also the universal design so people can age in place. So thank you.
Thank you, Member Fall. Mayor Patterson.
I'll be brief. It has come up a couple times now, the developer's lawyers. We have worked directly with the developer. We have not met with the developer lawyers or anything like that. Just for clarification on all this, it has been directly with the challenges that the developer is facing and ways in which we can create solutions to get through to having these houses developed. So again, I've heard a couple times, just for point of clarification, the city has not been engaging with lawyers from a developer to do anything. We have been dealing directly with the developer.
Thank you for that clarification. And there's a question in the chat: is there an option to shop for other builders? And we hope, as a city, to utilize this tool of a residential TIF for other projects. But quite frankly, I would say, from the perspective and experience of being on the Affordable Housing Commission, developers wanting to build things to sell in the 125 to 225 price range, they're definitely not knocking our door down at all. I mean, the city and the university have been looking for people who would come invest and do these types of projects, and this is the first one that we have going, and so that this isn't like this highly competitive project that we put out and And now we can say, oh, you know what? We don't like the deal you're giving us. We're going to go sell it to the other guy, because that's just not the situation. Yeah. Mayor Patterson.
To add to that, Member Grace, is that the owner is the design build. So it's different than it being a piece of property that nobody owns and someone is vying to sit there and develop on it. This is an actual parcel of land that is owned by a construction firm that will do the design build on that property. So it's very different than it just being out there on the free market.
Thank you. Are there other questions on this before we turn it back over to Chairperson Fall? Okay, we'll work on the energy language, right, Planner Paul, and we'll come back with something on that before this is introduced.
Great.
Okay. Thank you.
Right. Next on our agenda is the Athens City Code. One of the things that City Council, when they and the mayor addressing the all the events that happened this summer and Black Lives Matter protests and such, was to go through the various levels of code that we have and language to see whether it's up to date, I think would be the most logical way of saying it. The administration has been doing this, and this is one of the first things that will come through. Mostly it is changes in wording and definition. So, Mayor, do you want to address this? Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Member Fall. I had been going through City Code and just putting in various terms or words to look to see, what at the 50,000 foot level, what are things looking like throughout City Code? And one of the things I noticed right away was that there was certainly a level of inconsistency with language when it came to, I'll give you an example. I'll give all of council an example, which you hopefully will have in front of you if you don't have it already. Under 3.06.02, appointed officials and employees, and under Section C, it basically states, with respect to any matters directly or indirectly related to employment, the city shall not discriminate against any person because of that person's, and the former language was race, color, religion, sex, age, disability, national origin, or ancestry. Well, there's been a lot that's changed in the city code, and council is well aware of this, with things such as gender orientation or identity, marital status or familial status. So there's a lot that's changed. And so what I've done is I found the most comprehensive language when it comes to not discriminating against anyone, and that is basically race, creed, color, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity or expression, national origin or ancestry, marital or familial status, religious belief, age, or disability. That is currently the most extensive or most comprehensive of non-discriminatory groups that we have in code. Granted, council, that could change next week, that could change next year, it can change in 10 years. This is a dynamic document that you're all well aware of. And so what I've put before all of you in council is consistency. I've identified a number of places in code that had a much reduced discriminatory language, and I have enhanced it to read, which is the most recent comprehensive that includes, again, things like gender identity, orientation and identity, that council was fantastic in getting forward when it came to protections for all people in the city of Athens. So this is one more step in that direction to making sure that we are an inclusive environment here in the city of Athens. And so that's what you've got before you, is language changes. We'll continue to do this as we move forward.
Yeah, thank you. I think that's a great description. Athens has been a real leader in a lot of these issues. We've passed a lot of different resolutions and code that helps to expand the definitions. And we live up to we are in a welcoming city. So, Jeff, Member Reiser.
Oh, thank you. Mayor, is your plan then to take that description that you just gave us, the extended version, and then go through all the different parts of our municipal code that do not include that or just have parts of it, and then replace those older definitions with this new definition?
That's absolutely right. And that's what I've already done. That's what council will be taking up on Monday night, hopefully a week from tonight.
Well, I was just wondering if it'd be more efficient to have a separate section for this new definition, and then in all those other areas that need to be updated, just have it refer to this new section with the new definition in it. That way, if the definition that we now have changes in the future, all we have to do is just change it once in that section, and it would then be good for every other section because they're all referring to that one. Am I getting clear on that?
No, you're
Title I, what we do with all the fees, it's easier to change Title I when we have fees than.
Yeah, something like that, yes.
Right, so.
Just an idea.
Mayor?
I don't disagree with the idea and concept, Member Reisner, but we, under the Civil Rights Act, you also can't have discriminatory language in someone's land deed. And
exactly.
we have found that. So I would say for now, we keep it in every section of code that speaks. That way it's crystal clear. There's no doubt about who cannot be discriminated against if you just are thumbing through and all of a sudden you land on section 3.06, blah, blah. And you're going, oh, there it is right there. What I did was a search replace, and that's what council will have before them.
Okay.
I don't disagree with your comment, but let's make sure that from a challenge standpoint that everywhere we do have it to where you can't discriminate against individuals of any groups, anybody, that it's there.
Well, to your point about the land deeds, let me just speak one more time and I'll shut up, I promise. Is there anything that the city can do when a deed is now transferred, sold, cut, changed in some way to a new owner, that we mandate that any section of that deed that has some sort of discriminatory language must be eliminated? No ifs, ands, or buts about it. You cannot pass on that deed as it's written. You have to change it. Do we have any power to?
That's like a county sort of issue because deeds are established by county.
Yeah, but property is sold in the city of Athens, and we do a lot of regulation about property within the city of Athens. I don't see any difference here.
I can tell you, Member Reisner, that I'm working with the Director of Code Enforcement, David Riggs, to where, and that's a different topic altogether than what we're doing tonight with this. Yeah. But know that we're working on that to where if someone
meetings, to talk this stuff out.
If someone wants a lot split, if someone wants a variance, whatever.
Yeah,
we're working on that. We're working on it. I'm starting to feel like my office is bugged, Member Reisner. But
I'm a reader.
But also, I would hope that the county commissioner and other county offices also maybe take this as an opportunity to go through some of their, because like the recorder is the person where you would probably change wording in a deed sort of thing. And that's at the county level. And maybe we can just kind of poke them to do that sort of stuff.
Well, in Member Fall, if I may, just for a moment, is that I'm working with OMA and OML. This isn't a city of Athens issue. This isn't a county issue. It's not. It's a statewide. It's a national issue. It's a global issue. So I'm trying to work with the state to see if we can legislation moving forward to change the language and the speed at which someone can expunge discriminating language from your title, from your deed, from your land plat, to erase or at least begin on the healing path to overcome systemic racism.
Member Crowell?
Thank you, Member Fall. One of the things I appreciate the most about the city of Athens is its welcoming and non-discriminatory sort of nature, its progressiveness, and it hasn't always been that way. I feel like it has a deep history, but I know that the gender expression, sexual identity was vetoed by a mayor in the last 30 years, and council couldn't override that veto. So I really appreciate the work that Member Fall is doing, the city administration is doing, and I would almost say, while it is logistically a little bit more difficult to do the updates that Member Reisner was talking about, I would like this language repeated over and over and over and over again. I would like to see it everywhere. And I think that making it easier to put it in one place doesn't, as to the mayor's point, somebody's searching, and I'd like to see it in as many places as possible. So I appreciate the work and the city administration taking this on. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Member Clydfelter, please.
I also applaud Member Fall and Mayor Patterson for working on this. I think it's great. I think while a lot of people would go, oh, good, that's nice, yay, we're inclusive, this is good. And I do think people will like it. This could mean a lot to some of the people in those categories. It could be really important to some of them, and maybe especially the people with gender identity, because that usually isn't mentioned. But I'm just wondering, as we are somewhat pushing the envelope of inclusivity, right now, things in the nation as a whole, and to an extent, even in our wonderful town, are incredibly polarized. Polarized, it sounds like a Kodak name, I'm sorry. We have a great deal of political polarization, right? And I just wonder if, while we're at it, and protecting people in all different categories, if we might consider putting in a mention that you can't discriminate based on someone's political beliefs or expression, because it might not be impossible that a Democrat wouldn't sell to a conservative Republican, or a conservative Republican wouldn't rent to a Democrat, or somebody wouldn't rent to a socialist, or, and I don't think that somebody's political identity should cost that person a house, or whatever else is being considered in different parts of the code. I've never seen it ever in writing, but if we're going to push the envelope, why not push the envelope?
I think creed was traditionally that, wasn't that? That's how I always understood it. So, I don't know. Mayor?
I was just going to say, I don't believe political affiliation is a protected class. I think that is a part of the political process. So I don't think that could be done. What you raise is an interesting question, but I don't see, quite honestly, the need for a protected class being someone's political affiliation, because your political affiliation can change. You could be something one day, and the next day you can be something else, and the next day you can be something else. And so therefore, whom is being protected when you're doing something like that? That's part of democracy.
Does that answer your question? I think that's a good point. Because there is a difference between a protected class at the national level, at the federal level, than just somebody who might be, they don't like me sort of thing. They won't rent to me. Familiar protected class means that they, unless they're a specially designated, that just because you have a kid doesn't mean that somebody can say no because you have the kid and you can't get rid of them. So I think that's what the mayor's kind of pointing to. So, okay. Any other questions about this? So I think this is a really good discussion. A lot of this, it's amazing how antiquated some of our code is. So bit by bit, we'll be making it updated. So, okay, great. Thank you. The next is the more code changes. Pretty much this is the 3 boards that the mayor appoints people to, and then we say yay or nay. That's the Shade Tree Commission, the Disabilities Commission, and the Arts, Parks, and Rec Commission. Right now, most of the mayor would like to expand terms to 3 years, and tidying up some language. So, do you want to talk to that, Mayor?
Certainly. So there are a number of city council appointed boards and commissions. There are several city administration appointed boards and commissions. And in close reflection on those or examination of them, one of the things that was identified is that there are some boards and commissions that have 2-year terms, and you can serve 3 years and then you have to take a year off or whatever. It's term limited. There's a couple that are 3-year terms and have no term limits. Well, one that has no term limits or where you can serve forever. And then, or you could serve 2 3-year terms. City councils, all of yours are 3-year terms. And if I'm not mistaken, and Clerk of Council, correct me please if I'm incorrect in saying this, that they are limited to 2 terms. But that's what I'm proposing to do, is to take the boards and commissions that have 2-year terms, converting them into 3-year terms, and have 2 term limits. Hopefully that's not thoroughly confusing to everyone, but it is certainly for the position of the mayor. When I have to go and look for people to serve, it makes it easier to where I'm not having to sit there and go, oh, is it a 2-year term or is it a 3-year term? Is there term limits? Is there no term limits? It's, again, much like the language in discriminatory or non-discrimination language. This is cleaning up things in code to where there's more consistency when it comes to our boards and commissions, which I think is a direction that we should be taking, to where we have more consistency and understanding. It's easier for us to make sure the public understands going in, because I hear that often. Well, how long is the term? Because there is multiple lengths of term.
Great. Member Clark-Pelter?
This sounds really reasonable to me. I think having consistency among the different commissions makes a lot of sense. But I'm curious, what would happen to people who've already been serving on one of these committees for longer than 6 years?
Well, let me start by saying we have some boards and commissions where people have served for 15 years or longer.
Yeah, what happens to those folks?
Well, there's a couple things. I mean, as we roll forward with this, we've got it. Hopefully, council will approve this to where there's a change in the length of term and the number of terms. But anytime someone's term comes up, if it's a mayor-appointed board or commission and council approves, I still have the ability to not reappoint somebody. And so I'm not bound to the shot clock starting afresh once this goes through council. In some cases, it might be someone who has already served 2 years of a 2-year term, and I could roll them into, okay, you've got now 3-year term with the possibility of an additional 3-year term, and then you'll roll off. But that doesn't mean that for current appointees that I could, if there's someone else who wants to volunteer to serve and someone has served for a number of years, that I could, appoint someone else in that expired term.
Okay. Other questions? Okay. Grace?
Thank you. I think that this is a really good idea. It's easier to discuss service on things if they're consistent across the board as far as length of term and number of terms. And I think having term limits is a good idea. It will encourage new voices and new participation. And I think people who are committed to serving, we are so grateful for their dedication to the city. And we have a lot of boards and commissions. This doesn't prohibit someone from serving on a different board or commission. that they might also have an interest in if they wish to continue to serve. But I think the one thing I want to be sort of mindful of as we make changes is that the terms are staggered so that we don't suddenly, everybody's been on this commission for 2 terms and we've got a whole new commission that comes in and feels like they have no background or are starting from scratch. So just making sure, and I trust that they are, but we definitely want to keep staggered terms.
We will. That's a great point, Member Grace. That's the last thing you want to do, to where you create a new board or commission and everyone gets appointed for 3 years right off the bat. You've seen it in code. A lot of code at the onset says that a third will serve 1 year, a third will serve 2, a third will serve 3, and then henceforth after that, everyone serves a 3-year term. And that's that I'm not going to fiddle with that at all. That's not my intent. My intent is just to align terms and term limits as we move forward, and it'll still work as the way you just described.
Perfect. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Any other questions? Great. Well, that's all for my Planning and Development Committee. Thank you.
Thanks, Councilmember Fall. We'll move on to Transportation Committee, and that's chaired by Councilmember Katsas and joined by Councilmembers Crowell and Claude Felcher.
President Nicely, thank you. And I have just one point to bring up this evening, and this is looking to amend the expenditure ordinance for the Richland Avenue pedestrian passageway. And so a conversation was brought before me from EPW Director Jessica Dine. So basically, and it was all due to the $13,000 hand railing that came forward in last committee conversation. That actually also they found an additional issue with the project. Basically the project went over it exceeded the authorized amount by $60,000. Now we have to remember this was a multi-year project that was over $3 million. But basically what happened was one of the contractors ran into additional work that had to be done in order for the project to be completed. There was money in the fund line. And that money was paid to the contractor so that they would not end up in arbitration, and it was not brought before council in a timely manner. So the conversation at this point is EPW is very much aware that this is not the way that this is supposed to happen, but we're asking now after the fact to change the amount by $60,000. Member Crowell.
Thank you, Member Katsas. Unfortunate news. Does that $60,000 include the $13,000 hand railing, or is that in addition to?
In addition to. And just to go into detail, because I did figure people would probably want to know what the additional $60,000 was in charge was for, and I was thinking about this in a historical, because I'm a history major. This is the way I always go. But for 200 years, our civilization has probably impacted this specific piece of property. Going back to having a bridge there that connected Athens with Mechanicsburg, and looking at, we had a railroad very close by, no more than 10 or 15 yards. You had Anderson Laboratories that were present there until, I want to say the mid 90s or so. So there were additional utilities that were found underground. And that was one of the larger costs, was they had to eliminate those in order to get the footings in properly. And then there were some smaller things, like they had to add additional asphalt to smooth the transition between the bridge and the passageway, additional drainage to make sure that the passageway didn't get flooded in larger storms. So it's all kind of something that this was a very complex project that happened on a very tight space that had been impacted for many, many years. And so it's something that happens. I think of my own commercial project that I did on Stimson Avenue, which was only $500,000. I went over $20,000. So for someone to take a project, a $3 million project, and only run into $60,000 of additional charges, I think that they did very well in the process. Member Crowell, yes.
Thanks again, Member Katsas. Can you, do you understand exactly why we're just hearing about this now? I mean, this work is done, right? This has been paid, and now we're being asked to sign the check, basically. Do you understand exactly how we can help this from happening in the future?
Jessica, Director Adine basically said that this is not the way that this is supposed to be done. This error was just discovered now, and that's why they're coming forward with this issue now. They would have come sooner if they would have known, but just as they were going through the process of closing out the books, that's when this process came up, that they understood that they did not approach council for that additional expenditure.
Thank you.
Yeah. And Member Crowell, I did ask about, we've went through a director at EPW during this time. Director Adine did not believe that this was a fault or an issue of that, but I will say that we don't necessarily have the staffing levels that we need, and that's, once again, I don't want to bring up the pandemic, but this is kind of that ripple effect that you can find as we're moving through this process. Do we have any other additional questions pertaining to this at this point? Member Reisner.
And just to clear up in my mind, did this a change order and then billing occur under the former director, or did it happen during the transition, or when did it happen?
I don't know the answer to that question. And and additionally, we did pay for a project specialist to be overseeing this whole process, and I did not quiz Director Adine about that. So no, I don't have an answer to that question, but I can find out.
And I can get that answer for you too, Member Reisner.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to know who, put in the PO or the purchase order or whatever for the money, and it just sort of zipped right by.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks.
Okay. Any other additional questions or comments? Okay. Thank you very much. And that closes transportation for this evening.
Thanks, Councilmember Katsas. We'll move on to the Finance and Personnel Committee, and this is chaired by Councilmember Crowell and joined by Councilmembers Reisner, Katsas, and Smedley.
Thank you, President Isley. We really only have one item on our agenda tonight, some vacancies, but there are two vacancies that the committee and the city administration would like to bring to city council. As you know, the city administration is committed to transparency and discussing filling vacancies during the pandemic. And we have two here. And one I will segue right into from Member Katsas's Transportation Committee report, that the city administration would like to hire an assistant director of EPW. It's safe to say right now that Director Adine is doing about 4 jobs. She is the interim director of EPW. She is the interim engineer of the city. She still is the assistant city engineer. And then there's also the assistant director position, which is vacant. So the city has a candidate that they think would be excellent for an assistant director position. Interim Director Adine supports the city's moving in this direction. It is a candidate with institutional knowledge, worked for the city for many years, is interested in returning to work for the city, was previously a street supervisor. The Director of HR, Ron Lucas, approves. This is a very well-respected individual, and while there would be some adjustments to the job description necessary, this is, I think the EPW and Interim Director Adine could really use this support, and I am recommending that this position be filled. Are there any questions regarding the Assistant Director of EPW moving forward to hire an internal candidate? Well, yeah, former internal candidate. And I don't know, SSD Pyle, if I didn't obviously name names, I don't know if we want to talk about who this individual is or just bring it up like this. And if there are no questions for me or SSD Pyle or the mayor on this, then we'll move on to the other vacancy. And the other vacancy is a firefighter. Chief Reimer is requesting to fill one of the vacant positions. They are currently down 2 firefighters. Chief Reimer is looking at the next couple of years. He knows that he has a half a dozen or more firefighters who will be retirement eligible coming soon. Now, he doesn't expect any retirements until at least 2022, but he does want to be, prepared for that eventuality. He would like to fill this position for July 1 start date. This means that it will have been a year and a half where 2 positions have been funded yet vacant. So there's a year and a half of empty position savings. If they're able to hire the individual in July, they will do training in August for the firefighter 2 licensure. And Chief Reimer is just, again, through the city administration, bringing this up with council for feedback. So, Finance and Personnel Committee, any questions or thoughts? Yes, Member Katsas.
Thank you, Member Crowell. Just wanted to make a comment that I think that these are both 2 very important positions.
Thank you. Member Eisner.
Yeah, that's me. I agree with Member Costas. I think we've really strung ourselves out about as far as we can go and not filling positions. We're getting to a point where it's sort of the law of diminishing returns. Yeah, we're saving money on the short end, but in the long run, we're burning ourselves. So I agree. We need to fill these positions as soon as possible.
Great, thank you. Any other thoughts on these 2 vacancies? Okay, thank you, President Isley. That ends Finance and Personnel.
All right. And after much discussion and good discussion tonight, I think, on a lot of different topics, thank you all for being here. We'll consider ourselves adjourned at 8:24 p.m. and we'll see you